Can I date your poor son?
The question hung in the air of the Vanderbilt foyer, seemingly freezing the warmth of the massive 12-foot Christmas tree that dominated the room. Tiffany, 22 and dripping in diamonds that sparkled brighter than the tinsel, didn't even look up from her phone. She was filming, her camera lens trained mercilessly on Mrs. Corrine, the woman currently on her knees scrubbing the marble floor beneath a festive garland. Tiffany laughed, a sharp, brittle sound. She panned her phone toward the bay window. Outside, the world was buried in white, and a young man in a thin, ragged coat was shivering as he shoveled heavy drifts of snow from the long driveway. "Seriously, Corrine," Tiffany sneered, checking her reflection in the screen. "I need a date for the Christmas Eve gala to scare my ex. I need a charity case. So, can I date him? I'll even tip you extra, call it a Christmas bonus." Mrs. Corrine stopped scrubbing. For a moment, the only sound was the rhythmic shh of the brush against the stone and the faint hum of holiday jazz playing in the background.
Please help our daughter get to 1,000 subscribers. Yeah.
Kindly hit subscribe immediately. God bless you.
You're
Then,
lying.
silence.
I don't believe you.
She looked up.
It is the
Her
truth.
face was unlined, dignified, but her eyes held the cold weight of 1,000 secrets kept for too long. "You can ask him, Tiffany," she said softly, "but you cannot afford the price he charges." Tiffany cackled, throwing her head back. "Honey, I'm a Vanderbilt. I can buy his life." Mrs. Corrine didn't blink. A single tear escaped her eye, tracking through the dust on her cheek. It wasn't a tear of sadness. It was a tear of mourning for what was about to happen. She knew something Tiffany didn't. She knew that question would cost the girl everything. To understand why, we have to go back. 15 years ago, a blizzard rattled the mahogany frames of the Vanderbilt study. The room was dark, lit only by the dying embers of a fireplace that fought against the howling winter wind outside. Arthur Vanderbilt, then a man of 35, was on his knees. He wasn't the titan of industry the magazines would later profile. In that moment, he was a ruined man, sobbing into his hands as snow piled up against the glass. "They're taking it all, Corrine," he choked out, his breath visible in the drafty room. "The house, the cars, the company. I'm ruined. It's Christmas, and I have nowhere to go with the girl." Mrs. Corrine stood by the fireplace. She wasn't wearing a maid's uniform then. She was dressed in a sharp, tailored business suit that screamed power. She watched him crumble with a cool, detached gaze. "I know," she said, her voice steady. "I bought the dead, Arthur." Arthur looked up, his face pale. You what?" "You were just the nanny, and while you gambled, I invested," she replied, stepping closer to the warmth of the fire. "I own the deed to this estate now. I own the cars. I own the name." Arthur fell forward, grasping the hem of her trousers. "Please, don't kick us out into the cold. Tiffany, she's just a baby. She needs a home. She needs a father figure who isn't a failure." Mrs. Corrine looked at the framed photo on the desk, a picture of baby Tiffany wearing a tiny Santa hat. Her expression softened, just for a fraction of a second. "She can stay. You can stay," Corrine decided. "We will keep up the appearance that you are the billionaire, but in exchange, I stay close to her. You want to live here? As what? The owner?" "No," Corrine said, smoothing her jacket. "If people know I own it, they'll ask questions about where the money came from. I will be the maid, you will be the master. But remember, Arthur, behind closed doors, I am the one holding the leash." Present day. The memory of the blizzard faded, replaced by the sterile sunlight reflecting off the snow outside. Tiffany was still waiting for an answer, bored, tapping her manicured nails on her phone case. "Ugh, Daddy cut my cards again," she muttered, sliding open the heavy patio door. A gust of freezing wind rushed in, carrying snowflakes onto the pristine floor. She needed entertainment. She whistled loudly, a sharp sound meant for a dog. "Hey, Snowboy, get in here!" Outside, Dante stopped shoveling. He turned slowly, his breath misting in the frigid air. He had a smudge of dirt on his high cheekbones, and his knuckles were red from the cold, but his eyes were startlingly intelligent. He dropped the shovel and walked toward the house, tracking melting slush onto the floor Mrs. Corrine had just cleaned. Ew. Tiffany wrinkled her nose as he stepped inside, shivering. You're dripping wet. Listen, I'm bored. You want to make $500? Put on a suit if you even own one, and pretend to be my boyfriend for the weekend. Dante stared at her. The silence stretched, uncomfortable and thick. He didn't look submissive. He looked bored. Without a word, he walked past her. Hello? I'm talking to you, Tiffany snapped. Dante walked straight to the Steinway grand piano in the corner of the room, sitting next to a poinsettia display. It was a museum piece, untouched for years. He sat down on the bench. Don't touch that, Tiffany shrieked. That's worth more than your entire... Dante's frozen fingers hit the keys. The sound that erupted wasn't a clumsy plink. It was Carol of the Bells, but not the sweet version. It was a dark, complex Rachmaninoff-style arrangement. Violent, intricate, perfect. His hands flew across the ivory with the fury of a master virtuoso warming his soul. The music filled the cavernous hall, echoing off the gold leaf and ornaments. It was a performance that belonged in Carnegie Hall, not a foyer. Tiffany froze, her mouth open. The snowboy played with a passion that terrified her. He finished with a thunderous chord that left the room vibrating. He turned on the bench, rubbing his warming hands together, not even looking at her. You were saying something about $500? Dante said, his voice low and cultured. I charge $5,000 just to listen to you speak. Before Tiffany could respond, the front door burst open. Mr. Vanderbilt ran in, sweating despite the freezing temperature outside, his tie undone. Panic radiated off him like heat. He saw Dante at the piano and stopped dead. Dante! Vanderbilt gasped. What are you doing inside? Tiffany ran to her father, seizing the opportunity. Daddy, kick him out. The maid's son is acting like he owns the place. He's touching the piano. Vanderbilt didn't look at Tiffany. He looked past her, locking eyes with Mrs. Corrine. His face was a mask of sheer terror. Why is he here? Vanderbilt whispered to the maid. Is it time? I don't have the installment ready, Corrine. Please, not on Christmas. Tiffany frowned. Installment? Daddy, why are you whispering to the help? Vanderbilt snapped, his fear turning into aggression. Go to your room, Tiffany, now! What? Now? He roared. Shocked by her father's outburst, Tiffany grabbed her purse and stormed toward the stairs. In her blind anger, she kicked Mrs. Corrine's cleaning bucket. Dirty, soapy water splashed everywhere, soaking the festive rug. Clean it up, both of you, she screamed. She stomped up the stairs, but paused on the landing. Something was floating in the puddle of spilled water. It was a silver locket that had fallen out of Mrs. Corrine's apron pocket. Tiffany checked the foyer below. Her father and the maid were arguing in hushed, desperate tones. Dante was staring at his hands, which were trembling uncontrollably. Seizing the moment, Tiffany snuck down, snatched the wet locket, and ran to her room. She sat on her bed, heart racing, and pried the silver clasp open. She expected to see a picture of Dante, maybe a husband. Instead, she saw herself. On the left was a photo of Mrs. Corrine holding a baby wrapped in a red holiday blanket. On the right, an inscription etched into the metal. Tiffany, my property, my rules. Tiffany touched her own neck. She pulled a framed photo from her nightstand, her favorite childhood picture taken on her first Christmas. It was the exact same baby. That's me, she whispered, her blood running cold. Why does the maid have a picture of me? Knock, knock, knock. The sound on her bedroom door was heavy and deliberate. Tiffany. Dante's voice came from the other side. It wasn't the voice of a yard boy. It was the voice of someone in charge. Open the door. You took something that doesn't belong to you. Tiffany's heart hammered against her ribs like a trapped bird. She barely had time to shove the silver locket behind her back before the door handle turned. Dante didn't barge in. He stepped into her room with a quiet, terrifying grace that instantly made the opulent bedroom feel small. He was still wearing his wet coat, snowflakes melting on his shoulders, but the submissive yard boy was gone. In his place was a man who moved with the predatory elegance of a panther entering its own den. Give it to me, Tiffany, he said. His voice wasn't angry. It was weary. Get out, she stammered, backing up until her legs hit the edge of her four-poster bed. I'll scream! I'll tell my father! Dante laughed, a dark, humorless sound. He closed the distance between them in 2 long strides. Your father? He stopped inches from her, close enough that she could smell the scent of winter air and old, expensive tobacco on him. Your father is currently downstairs, begging my mother for mercy. He can't help you. Tiffany trembled, clutching the locket tighter behind her. She expected him to grab her, to force her hand. Instead, Dante did something that froze the air in her lungs. He reached out and gently tucked a stray lock of blonde hair behind her ear. The touch was electric. His fingers were rough from the cold shovel, but his touch was agonizingly tender. It was the way a lover touches a partner, or a husband touches a wife, familiar, possessive, and sad. You always were stubborn, Dante whispered, his eyes searching hers. Even when we were 7, you used to steal cookies from the kitchen and hide them in the piano bench. You don't remember, do you? Tiffany blinked, her breath hitching. I've never met you before today. You have, he murmured, leaning in until their foreheads almost touched. The hostility in the room melted into a confusing, heavy heat. You just chose to forget. Or maybe you were paid to. He reached around her waist. Tiffany gasped, her body betraying her by leaning into him. He didn't grab her. He simply covered her hand with his fingers intertwining with hers over the cold metal of the locket. It wasn't a struggle. It was a dance. He gently pried the locket from her grip, but he didn't pull away. He held her hand, bringing it to his chest. Why? She whispered, her voice trembling. Why does your mother have a picture of me? Why does it say I'm property? Dante looked down at her, his expression softening into pure heartbreak. Because that's the only way we could keep you safe, Tiff. He guided her hand under his wet coat, pressing her palm against his chest, right over his heart. But beneath the fine wool of his sweater, Tiffany felt something rigid. A bandage. She pulled back, confused, and before he could stop her, she pushed his coat open. She gasped. Dante's dress shirt was unbuttoned at the top, revealing a chest and neck marred by bruises and the distinct ugly tracks of needle punctures. A permanent port was taped to his collarbone. You're sick, she realized, the horror dawning on her. I'm dying, Tiffany, Dante said simply. He took her hand again, kissing her knuckles. The romance of the gesture was undercut by the tragedy of his skin, pale, clammy, exhausted. Suddenly, Mrs. Corrine's words from the foyer crashed into Tiffany's mind. You cannot afford the price he charges. The installment, Tiffany whispered, tears welling up. Daddy said he didn't have the installment. He wasn't talking about rent money. Dante shook his head slowly. Your father has a rare bone marrow type, O negative, with a specific antigen. He's the only match. He pays his rent in blood, Tiffany. He donates to keep me alive. That's the deal. He gets the mansion, the fame, the lie, and I get to live another month. Tiffany covered her mouth. The romantic tension twisted into nausea. Her father wasn't just a squatter. He was a biological farm. And Dante? Dante wasn't a servant. He was the victim. But why? Tiffany cried, grabbing Dante's lapels. Why does he owe you this? Why is he terrified of you? Dante looked away, staring at the falling snow outside her window. I didn't get sick by accident. 10 years ago, the Vanderbilt chemical plant dumped waste into the groundwater of the estate next door. My estate. I got leukemia because your father wanted to save money on disposal fees. He turned back to her, his eyes burning with a mix of love and resentment. He stole my life, so my mother took his. Tiffany felt the world spinning. The villain she thought was a poor boy was actually the tragic hero of her father's sins. And yet, he was holding her like she was the only thing that mattered. If you hate him, Tiffany whispered, why are you being so nice to me? Dante stepped closer, trapping her against the bedframe again. The tension spiked, hot and desperate. Because I don't hate you, he breathed, tilting her chin up. I could never hate you, even after they made you forget me. Made me forget. She trailed off, mesmerized by his lips. Who am I, Dante? Dante leaned down, his lips brushing her ear. The romance was intoxicating, a sweet poison. You're the girl I promised to marry when we were 6 years old, he whispered, before the accident. Tiffany pulled back, confused. What accident? I've never been in an accident. Dante stepped back, his face hardening again. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a death certificate. He held it up. You haven't, Dante said, his voice dropping to a chilling whisper. But Tiffany Vanderbilt was. He handed her the paper. Read the name, sweetheart. Tiffany Vanderbilt died 15 years ago. You aren't her. Subscribe for part 3 to find out who she really is and why the DNA test will change everything.